The fact that the Giza Plateau, it's a fact, of course, that Egyptologists completely dispute, but the fact that the principal monuments of the Giza Plateau, the three Great Pyramids and the Great Sphinx, all lock astronomically on the date of around 10,500 BC.
For generations, we've been told the pyramids of Egypt were nothing more than tombs, built by pharaohs, crafted with copper tools, and raised through sheer human determination. But what if that version of history is incomplete? Or worse, what if it's entirely wrong? Graham Hancock has spent decades arguing that we've misunderstood the greatest puzzle of human civilization. According to him, the pyramids weren't built the way we've been taught. He claims he's uncovered who really constructed them, and he insists the evidence has been hiding in plain sight. Buckle up, because this is not the Egypt you remember from school. This is Graham Hancock's Egypt, where lost civilizations, forgotten cataclysms, and suppressed truths might hold the real story behind humanity's most enduring monument. Who exactly is Graham Hancock? If you've ever binged a Netflix documentary at 2 a.m., or stumbled across a YouTube deep dive about ancient mysteries, chances are you've seen Graham Hancock. He isn't an archaeologist. He isn't a historian with endless degrees hanging on his wall. And that, strangely enough, is exactly what makes him so compelling. Hancock is a British journalist by training. He cut his teeth writing for heavyweight publications like The Times and The Economist. His early career revolved around current affairs and politics, not pyramids. But somewhere in the 1990s, he took a hard left turn into humanity's forgotten past. And once he did, he never looked back. His breakout work, Fingerprints of the Gods, 1995, sent shockwaves through both the publishing world and academia. In it, Hancock laid out a daring idea that long before Sumer, Egypt, or Mesopotamia, there existed an advanced civilization, now lost to time. A civilization that survived a global cataclysm, passed down fragments of its knowledge, and left behind monuments far beyond the capabilities of their supposed builders. For Hancock, the pyramids weren't just tombs. They were fingerprints of this vanished world. Since then, Hancock has doubled down with books like Magicians of the Gods and America Before, along with the Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse. He's become both wildly popular and wildly controversial, praised by millions who crave answers, and condemned by academics who see him as dangerous to the field of archaeology. But whether you view him as a visionary or a provocateur, one thing is certain. Graham Hancock asks the questions most of us secretly wonder, but rarely dare to voice. His biggest question? Who really built the pyramids, and why does the official story feel so incomplete? The official story versus Hancock's skepticism. The version you probably memorized in school goes like this. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2560 BCE, under the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Tens of thousands of workers spent 20 years dragging massive limestone and granite blocks into place using copper tools, sledges, ropes, and determination. The result? A tomb fit for a king, one that would stand as the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. It's an impressive story. It paints a picture of human grit and engineering genius. And for mainstream archaeologists, it's proof that even in the Bronze Age, humanity could achieve near-miraculous feats without the need for advanced technology or outside help. But Graham Hancock isn't convinced. In fact, he flat-out rejects this narrative. To him, the orthodox explanation doesn't just leave questions unanswered. It actively ignores glaring inconsistencies. He calls it a comforting myth, built on shaky foundations. The scale problem. The Great Pyramid isn't just big, it's mind-bendingly massive. Roughly 2.3 million stone blocks make up its structure, with some weighing up to 80 tons. Many of the granite blocks used inside weren't quarried locally. They came from Aswan, more than 500 miles away. How exactly were they hauled across deserts and rivers without wheels, pulleys, or iron tools? Mainstream archaeology waves at theories of sledges, barges, and manpower. But Hancock, and many curious minds, see this as little more than hand-waving. Moving 80-ton blocks that distance isn't just hard. It borders on impossible with the technology supposedly available in 2500 BCE. The time crunch. If the pyramid really was completed in just 2 decades, the builders would have needed to set one block in place every 2 to 3 minutes, working day and night, without rest, without mistakes, and without delays. Imagine running a construction site at that pace, with no weekends, no modern cranes, no project management software. For Hancock, it doesn't pass the smell test, the missing blueprints. The ancient Egyptians recorded everything, from grain taxes to funerary spells. But when it comes to the most ambitious construction project in human history, nothing. No plans, no drafts, no schematics. Just silence. Hancock points to this as a red flag. It's as if the pyramid wasn't built piece by piece, but arrived already perfected, like an inheritance from a forgotten past. Tools that don't add up. Copper chisels against granite. The hardest stones on Earth. That's the mainstream explanation for how the blocks were shaped and fitted. But anyone who has worked with stone knows copper is far too soft. Modern stonemasons using diamond-tipped drills struggle to achieve the precision seen in the pyramid's internal chambers. How did Bronze Age workers pull off cuts so fine you can barely slide a razor blade between them? The empty tomb. Unlike other Egyptian tombs, which are covered with hieroglyphs and artwork celebrating the deceased, the Great Pyramid is completely bare inside. No inscriptions, no carvings, no grand declaration of Khufu's eternal legacy. Just cold, empty stone. For Hancock, this is damning evidence that the Great Pyramid wasn't even designed as a tomb at all. A perfect cosmic alignment. Perhaps the most astonishing detail, the Great Pyramid is aligned with true north to within 3/60 of a degree. That's more precise than many modern buildings constructed with lasers and GPS. How could ancient builders, supposedly armed with only ropes and sightlines, achieve such flawless orientation? Put together, the insane scale, the unrealistic timeline, the missing records, the tool problem, the barren interior, and the flawless alignment. Hancock argues the official narrative doesn't just creak under scrutiny, it collapses. And if the pyramids weren't simply built by Khufu's workers around 2560 BCE, then the obvious question follows. Who really built them? And when? Were the pyramids much older than we think? This is where Graham Hancock really lights the fuse. He doesn't just say the orthodox story is shaky. He argues the pyramids themselves might predate ancient Egypt altogether. According to him, the Great Pyramid and even the Sphinx may be survivors of a civilization that thrived thousands of years earlier, long before Pharaoh Khufu ever came to power. It sounds outrageous until you look at the evidence Hancock points to. Clues from the Sphinx. Hancock leans heavily on the work of Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist who shook the academic world in the 1990s with his study of the Great Sphinx. Schoch noticed deep vertical weathering patterns on the Sphinx's body, erosion that looks less like desert winds and more like heavy rainfall. Here's the problem. The Giza Plateau has been bone dry for the last 5,000 years. The kind of rainfall erosion seen on the Sphinx would have required centuries of wet, humid weather, conditions that last existed in the Sahara more than 10,000 years ago. If the Sphinx is that old, Hancock argues, then the pyramids beside it might belong to the same forgotten era. Instead of being built by the Old Kingdom pharaohs, they may have been inherited, repurposed, and claimed by later Egyptians as their own. The Orion Connection. But Hancock doesn't stop at geology. He dives into the skies. The layout of the three pyramids at Giza matches almost perfectly with the three stars of Orion's belt. Egyptologists admit the resemblance, but Hancock points out a bigger detail. The alignment isn't perfect for 2500 BCE, the supposed construction date. It matches far better with the sky around 10,500 BCE. That's thousands of years earlier than Egyptian civilization is supposed to have existed. Hancock and his ally Robert Bovell call this the Orion correlation theory, a cosmic fingerprint that links the pyramids to an impossibly ancient date. Enter Göbekli Tepe. If you think Hancock's argument is pure speculation, consider this. In the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Dated to around 9,600 BCE, it's the oldest known megalithic site in the world. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than any civilization in the textbooks. What makes Göbekli Tepe shocking isn't just its age, it's the sophistication. Huge carved pillars, elaborate designs, astronomical alignments. And yet it was built by people we thought were just simple hunter-gatherers. To Hancock, this is the smoking gun. If advanced architecture could exist 12,000 years ago in Turkey, then why not in Egypt? Göbekli Tepe proves humans were capable of far more, far earlier, than mainstream history admits. The cataclysm hypothesis. So why did this supposed earlier civilization vanish? Hancock ties it to a cataclysm known as the Younger Dryas impact, around 12,800 years ago. Evidence suggests a fragmented comet struck Earth, triggering massive floods, rapid climate change, and the collapse of ecosystems worldwide. If an advanced culture existed before this disaster, Hancock argues, it would have been wiped out, leaving only scattered survivors. Those survivors may have carried fragments of their knowledge into the future, passing it on to cultures like ancient Egypt. The pyramids, then, could be relics of that earlier epoch, enduring monuments built before the flood, later adopted by the pharaohs. For Hancock, this isn't just a theory about Egypt. It's a challenge to the very timeline of human civilization. He suggests that history isn't a straight line of progress, from simple to advanced. Instead, it's a cycle: rise, catastrophe, fall, and rediscovery. And if he's right, the pyramids may not just be monuments to kings, but messages from a lost world, stone libraries carrying knowledge across the ages. Technology they shouldn't have had. Even if you set aside debates about the pyramids' age, there's still a glaring problem: the engineering, the precision, the scale, the execution. It all feels out of step with what we're told Bronze Age builders could accomplish. For Graham Hancock, this is where the orthodox story really starts to collapse. Stonework beyond copper tools. Step inside the Great Pyramid's chambers, and you'll see stonework that looks shockingly modern. The granite blocks are cut so flat, so smooth, that they reflect light almost like polished glass. Some joints are so tight you can't slip a razor blade between them. This isn't rough, brute force construction. It's precision engineering. Mainstream archaeologists say copper chisels and pounding stones did the job. But anyone who's tried working granite knows copper is far too soft. Even modern masons with diamond-tipped drills struggle to achieve the surfaces seen at Giza. So, how did ancient builders do it? Hancock says the official answer is no answer at all. It's a shrug dressed up as certainty. Stones that defy physics. And then there's the issue of scale. Some blocks at Giza weigh up to 80 tons. At Baalbek in Lebanon, single stones exceed 1,000 tons. The so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman in a nearby quarry is estimated at 1,200 tons, larger than any crane today could lift. So how did ancient people move them? Ropes? Rollers? Wooden sledges? Hancock argues that this explanation is more magical than mechanical. If even our most advanced machines would struggle, it's naive to assume ancient workers just dragged these megaliths around with sheer willpower. A global fingerprint. What makes this puzzle harder to dismiss is that the same stonework fingerprint appears worldwide. In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, massive stones are cut into irregular shapes and fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle, with no mortar, yet so snug they've survived centuries of earthquakes. In Bolivia, at Pumapunku, you find granite blocks carved with machine-like precision, featuring right angles and drilled holes that seem out of place in pre-Columbian times. Egypt, Peru, Bolivia, Southeast Asia, the styles echo one another. Different continents, supposedly disconnected cultures, yet the same baffling level of skill. For Hancock, this isn't coincidence. It's evidence of a shared inheritance, a legacy of techniques passed down from an earlier, forgotten world. Lost knowledge or lost technology? Hancock doesn't claim aliens built these monuments. Instead, he suggests ancient humans had knowledge, and possibly techniques we've lost. Maybe it was advanced understanding of geometry, acoustics, or natural forces like magnetism and vibration. Some researchers even speculate about sound-based levitation or energy tools. To mainstream scholars, that's fringe science. But Hancock points to a simple truth. No one has ever replicated the Great Pyramid with Bronze Age tools. Reconstructions always fall short. If the orthodox story were true, why can't we repeat the feat with the same tools and methods? For Hancock, the pyramids and other megaliths aren't just architectural marvels. They're anomalies, stone puzzles that whisper of a chapter in human history we've forgotten. And if that's the case, then maybe these monuments weren't just built as tombs or temples. Maybe they were designed to endure precisely because they carried a message across millennia. Hancock's smoking guns, the evidence he brings. Graham Hancock has been called a storyteller, a provocateur, even a pseudoscientist. But what makes him different from your average conspiracy theorist is this: he always brings evidence. It might not be the kind of peer-reviewed proof academia accepts, but it's compelling enough to keep millions of people questioning the official version of history. Buried secrets beneath the sand. Using ground-penetrating radar and seismic scans, researchers have detected anomalies beneath the Giza Plateau, chambers, tunnels, and voids that have yet to be fully explored. Hancock argues these underground features may predate the visible pyramids themselves. If confirmed, it would mean Egypt is sitting on a hidden record of its past, untouched and unexplained. The mystery underwater. Then there's Yonaguni, a submerged site off the coast of Japan. Divers have found what looks like a giant stepped pyramid beneath the waves, complete with platforms, terraces, and straight angles that scream human design. Mainstream scholars debate whether it's natural or man-made, but Hancock, who has dived there himself, insists it's no accident. And Yonaguni isn't alone. In the Bahamas, the Bimini Road stretches underwater like an ancient highway. Off India's coast, near Dwarka, entire submerged structures have been found. To Hancock, these aren't just curiosities. They're signs of coastal civilizations swallowed when sea levels rose after the last ice age. Maps that shouldn't exist. Perhaps the strangest clue comes not from stone, but from parchment. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, appears to show Antarctica's coastline. Not as it looks today, buried in ice, but as it might have looked 6,000 to 12,000 years ago when the land was ice-free. How could a 16th century map maker know this unless he had access to much older source maps? Hancock believes the answer is simple. He did. That knowledge, he argues, came from a forgotten civilization that had already mapped the world. Anomalous artifacts. Scattered through history are objects that don't seem to fit their time. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device, functions like a mechanical computer, predicting planetary movements with astonishing precision. The so-called Baghdad battery looks suspiciously like a simple galvanic cell. And in Egypt, granite cores drilled with spiral grooves suggest machine-like drilling far beyond copper chisels. While none of these are directly tied to the pyramids, Hancock strings them together as hints of a broader truth. Ancient people had access to technologies and methods that we've since lost. The flood myths. Finally, Hancock points to stories. Across cultures, from Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh to biblical Noah to flood legends in Mesoamerica, India, and Polynesia, there are strikingly similar tales of a great deluge, of knowledge-bearers from the sea, of civilizations wiped out in a single stroke. For Hancock, these myths aren't fantasy. They're fragmented memories of real events, echoes of a cataclysm that erased an earlier chapter of humanity's story. Survivors, he believes, carried knowledge forward, planting the seeds for cultures that would later rise as first civilizations. Are these fragments definitive proof? Number. Hancock admits that himself, but he argues they form a pattern so consistent across geology, astronomy, cartography, and mythology that ignoring it is more unscientific than considering it. Why academia keeps saying no? By this point, you might be thinking, if Hancock's arguments are so interesting, why don't archaeologists at least take them seriously? Why the instant dismissal? The answer, Hancock argues, has less to do with facts and more to do with power, reputation, and control of the story we tell about ourselves. The gatekeepers of history. Academic archaeology isn't just about digging in the dirt. It's a professional world with its own rules, hierarchies, and gatekeepers. To be respected, you need degrees, published papers, grants, and approval from senior scholars. Step outside the accepted narrative, and you risk your career. Hancock? He's never played by those rules. He's a journalist, not an archaeologist. Instead of submitting to peer-reviewed journals, he writes best-selling books and speaks directly to millions of people. To academics, that's not research. It's showmanship. And worse, it threatens the authority they've worked decades to protect: the fragile timeline. For mainstream archaeology, the current story of civilization is neat and tidy. Mesopotamia rises, Egypt follows, Greece and Rome come next, and then us. It's a comforting, linear tale of progress. But if Hancock is even partly correct, that timeline collapses. Civilization wouldn't begin 5,000 years ago. It would stretch back 12,000 years or more. That means rewriting textbooks, revising museums, and admitting that decades of scholarship may have been wrong. That's not just inconvenient, it's humiliating. Protecting the paradigm. Archaeologists often argue they're protecting the field from pseudoscience. Wild theories about Atlantis, aliens, and time travelers. And to be fair, there's plenty of nonsense out there. But Hancock insists that in their rush to defend the paradigm, scholars throw out baby with bathwater. Instead of investigating anomalies, they dismiss them outright. For him, that's not science, that's dogma. True science should welcome challenges and new data, not bury them under ridicule. The threat of storytelling. Perhaps Hancock's biggest crime in academic eyes is that he's too good at telling stories. He speaks with passion, writes with flair, and captures the imagination of ordinary people. To scholars who've spent decades carefully assembling data, this feels dangerous. Hancock doesn't just raise questions, he inspires millions to question authority. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is why the academic establishment says no. Not because his ideas are impossible, but because they're disruptive. At the end of the day, the pyramids remain what they've always been: massive stone riddles, challenging us to look closer. Mainstream archaeology says we already have the answers. Hancock says the answers we've been given don't add up. And that leaves us with a choice. Do we accept the neat, comfortable version of history? Or do we dare to look beyond it? Rethinking the pyramids. Why this matters. So here we are, standing at the foot of the Great Pyramid, staring up at 2.3 million stones that refuse to give up their secrets. For mainstream archaeology, the case is closed. Tombs, pharaohs, copper chisels, end of story. For Graham Hancock, the case is just beginning. A lost civilization, a cataclysm that erased it, and a surviving message carved into stone for us to decode. Whether you see him as a visionary or a provocateur, Hancock forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. We don't know nearly as much about our past as we think we do. The pyramids aren't just monuments to dead kings, they're puzzles. Their silence is louder than words, their precision beyond explanation, their very existence a challenge to everything we believe about human history. A message from the past? Maybe, just maybe, these structures were designed to outlast cataclysms, to carry knowledge across forgotten ages, to remind us that civilizations rise and fall, and rise again. Perhaps the true purpose of the pyramids isn't to honor Khufu or any other pharaoh, but to tell us something vital. We've been here before. Humanity has climbed to heights, faced destruction, and clawed its way back. And we might do it again. Why the debate won't end. Mainstream scholars may dismiss Hancock, but millions listen. Why? Because the official story feels incomplete. Because people sense that the world is older, stranger, and more mysterious than we've been told. And because deep down, we all crave the truth, even if it scares us, even if it means rewriting everything. The unfinished story of us. The pyramids stand as stone time capsules, mysterious, immovable, waiting. They don't care about academic debates or bestsellers. They don't care whether we call them tombs or star maps. They simply exist, daring us to keep asking questions. And maybe that's the point. History isn't finished. It isn't fixed. It's a living puzzle, unfolding piece by piece. The pyramids are there to remind us that curiosity is never wasted, that certainty is often an illusion, and that the greatest secrets may still be buried under our feet, or written in the stars above us. So, who really built the pyramids? Hancock says it wasn't Khufu's workers alone. He says it was the legacy of a lost civilization, reaching out across time to remind us of what humanity once was, and what it could be again. What do you think? Were the pyramids built by the Egyptians we know, or by a civilization long forgotten? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of our past. Because one thing's for sure, the story of the pyramids is far from over.